Hello class, we're on page 293 in our arithmetic book. Today we are going to learn how to divide with a decimal divisor. So we did learn how to divide with a decimal dividend. That means we have a decimal in our dividend. This time we are going to have a decimal for both our divisor and our dividend. Now some of you are going to say, where is my dividend? Where is my divisor? Now the divisor is the one that is outside the house. Our dividend is the number which is inside the house. But whenever we are dividing, when there is a decimal in our divisor, we are going to do something to that decimal because we don't want a decimal point in our divisor. Now, what are we going to do? We did learn how to multiply by 10, 100, and 1000. Remember, all you had to do was move the decimal point. So we are going to do the same exact thing today. We are going to apply that concept as we are dividing with a decimal divisor. So it's going to move on to our rule. Whenever we are dividing with a decimal divisor, it says to eliminate the decimal point. That means you don't want a decimal point in your divisor. Multiply both the divisor and the dividend by the power of 10 needed to eliminate the decimal point in the divisor. How are you going to eliminate that decimal point? Now you want your decimal point to be at the very end of your whole number, not at the beginning, but at the very end. That's how you are going to eliminate that decimal point. So it says multiply both the divisor and the dividend by the power of 10 needed to eliminate the decimal point in the divisor. Multiplying both the dividend and the divisor by the same number will not change your answer. Now let's go and move on to an example because some of you are confused. What do you mean with multiplying? What do you mean with eliminating that decimal point? So let's go and move on to an example. And my first example is 0.27 divided by 2.16. Let's go and look at our dividend and our divisor. Our dividend is 2.16 and our divisor is 0.27. Do you have a decimal point in your divisor? Yes, you do. Do you want a decimal point in your divisor? No, you don't want a decimal point in your divisor. So what I'm going to do, I am going to eliminate that decimal point. How? I have to move my decimal point to the end of the whole number. So right now my decimal point is right here. I want my decimal point to be right here. Now you're going to say, all you have to do is move the decimal point. That is correct. So it's going to move that decimal point 1 and 2 times. If I moved my decimal point 2 times, I am multiplying that decimal by what? By 100. Remember, every time you move a decimal point once, you are multiplying by 10. So right here, multiplying by 10 and then multiplying by 10 again, that means times 100. So I'm multiplying 0.27 times 100. And I am going to do the same exact thing to my dividend. I'm going to multiply times 100. And whenever I multiply times 100, all I have to do is move my decimal point depending on how many zeros I have. How many zeros do I have in that 100? 2 times. So all I have to do is move my decimal point 2 times. So I'm going to rewrite that decimal. It's 27 divided by 216. Let's go ahead and find the answer. 27 divided by 216. How many times can 27 go into 21? 0 times. How many times can 27 go into 216? Give it an estimation. 27 can go into 216 8 times. 27 times 8 is 216, and we have 0 as our remainder. That means my final answer is 8. So whenever I am multiplying 0.27 divided by 2.16, my final answer is going to be 8. Let's go and move on to our next example. I have 0.9 divided by 24.3. Do I have a decimal point in my divisor? Yes, I do. I have a decimal point right there. But where do you want your decimal point? You want your decimal point to be at the very end of your whole number. So right there. So how many times are you moving your decimal point? You are moving your decimal point one time. If you're moving your decimal point one time, what number are you multiplying? You're multiplying times 10. So it's going to multiply times 10 to our dividend as well. That means all I have to do is move my decimal point one time to the right. Let's go ahead and rewrite that decimal. 9 divided by 243. And all I have to do now is divide. How many times can 9 go into 24? That'll be 2 times. 2 times 9 equals 18. I have a remainder of 6. Bring down that 3. How many times can 9 go into 63? That'll be 7 times. 9 times 7 equals 63. And a remainder of 0. That means my final answer is 27. Before you move on to your classwork, let me go ahead and explain that the number of times you move your decimal point should be the exact same as your dividend and your divisor. That means if you move your decimal point 2 times in your divisor, you have to move 2 times your decimal point in your dividend as well. If you move your decimal 1 time in your divisor, you have to move your dividend 1 time. So as you can see, my numbers are equal. So if you move your decimal point twice, you want to move your decimal point twice in your dividend as well. If your numbers are different, you are going to get a wrong answer. So make sure you move the same exact numbers of decimal point to your divisor and your dividend. All you want to do though is eliminate that decimal point. That means moving your decimal point from the beginning to the end, or from the middle to the end, right? So your classwork today is going to be page 293, and you are going to do all other problems in page 293. Goodbye.